Welcome back to another Zip Productions video. My name is TJ Feralis. Let's talk. Special thanks to Kevin Kim for helping me put this video together. Today we're talking about gambling. What are some misconceptions about gambling? What is advantage gambling and how does it work? And how does professional gambling work on the most basic level? These are the basics. Quick disclaimer before we continue, gambling's bad and you should never do it. Moving on. Let's take care of some common misconceptions about gambling in general. First of all, gambling is regulated. The Gaming Commission, also known as the Gaming Control Board, regulates casinos anywhere from their accounting all the way up to auditing the returns on their slot machines. Each state has their own laws. For example, in Nevada, the minimum return on a slot machine is 75%, or in Florida, it's 85%. Remember, this is the minimum. The payouts are usually 90% or more. So to use Nevada as an example, if in a year a machine accepted $1 million, then the machine should give back around $750,000, but usually more. Odds are odds. That's the bottom line. Just because you haven't won in a while does not mean you're due for a payout. You may have had an experience where the person sitting right next to you playing the exact same game ended up winning big. That machine must be luckier, right? Wrong. If it's the same game, they all have the same odds of paying out. Just because you haven't won in a while doesn't mean you're due for a payout. This is known as the gambler's fallacy. The casino cannot control when you win or lose. There's no magical switch that the casino can turn on and off to control your payouts. There's no such thing as timing your button press perfectly. The numbers and symbols are just an illusion. What really determines your payout is the computer inside. It generates a random result based off its set parameters. Either you win or you lose. Even if it looks like you're so close to winning, it means nothing. Rubbing the machine doesn't help you win. There's no secret to those fancy touchscreens. Again, like the previous point, it's all about the computer-generated result. There is no secret dice rolling technique. You may have heard people claim to be able to manipulate dice. This is also known as dice setting. These people sell guides and materials to anyone dumb enough to give away their money. Wherever you go in the advantage gambling community, there really is no evidence that suggests that dice setting provides a statistical advantage. And besides, you wouldn't find a professional gambler caught dead at a craps table. It's simply not worth their time. Yeah, I know, some of these things seem absurd, but you'd be surprised how many people out there believe these things. You might even run into these people during your next casino trip. So on to the meat and potatoes. Simply put, advantage gambling is a legal way of gaining an advantage while gambling. Emphasis on legal. An advantage player, AP for short, is someone who engages in advantage gambling or advantage play. So you can't do anything illegal, and you can't break the rules of the game. How is it even possible to game the system? Is it even possible to gain an advantage against a casino? The answer is yes. But first, we need to look at the law of large numbers. The law of large numbers tells us what to expect if we repeat the same experiment many times. The average of those results eventually converges to what's expected, the more times you repeat the experiment. So here's an example. Here's 3 coins. We're gonna flip all 3 of them. Now, if we ended our experiment here, then tails appeared 100% of the time. But the law of large numbers tells us that if we flip this coin thousands of times, then the result should average to about 50%. Makes sense, right? Now, casinos have an advantage built into all their games. This is called the house edge. The house edge can range anywhere from 0.5% for games like blackjack or craps to over 20% for games like Keno and certain slot machines. So if the house edge is 0.5%, this means with correct strategy, our chances of winning a blackjack hand is 49.5%. We can use this information to calculate our expected value, or EV for short. The formula for EV is our chances of winning times the amount won per bet, minus our chances of losing times the amount lost per bet. If the minimum bet for a blackjack scenario is $10, then the formula looks like this. For an EV of minus 10 cents. So this means for every $10 we bet, we lose on average 10 cents. If we play this game 10 times for a total wager of $100, we can theoretically expect to lose about $1. Well, that doesn't seem so bad, right? Well, in the short term, perhaps not. But it's in the casino's best interest to keep you playing because over the course of 10, 20, 30 plus bets, those theoretical dollars start to add up, and because of the law of large numbers, As long as the house has the edge, you're destined to lose. So how does an AP make a living? There are 4 main categories of advantage gambling: live poker, table games, video poker, and sports betting. Since live poker is the only one that doesn't involve a house edge, I'll talk about it very briefly. Some of the wealthiest advantage gamblers are professional poker players. You may have seen them on TV. As a professional poker player, you dedicate your life to studying the game, learning all the ins and outs, everything from the statistical strength of your hand, all the way to player psychology. Although much of the game is based off of chance, and although the approach to the game and strategy may vary, one thing is uncontested. Poker is a game of skill, and playing well consistently equates to positive EV. Table games, such as blackjack and baccarat, where things get interesting. Techniques like card counting have been popularized due to its exposure in movies and media. The high-low count and the KO count are the most popular methods of tracking cards in blackjack. These techniques are essentially the same in theory. Basically, keep track of what cards have been dealt in order to more accurately predict winning and losing plays. Hole carding is another way of gaining an edge. This involves a player gaining knowledge of a dealer's face-down cards. A dealer is trained to handle cards in a very specific way, but humans aren't perfect, and improper card handling technique can produce a flash. A flash is when a dealer unintentionally reveals part of his or her hole cards. As long as the player isn't using an external device, using this information is legal. In fact, I myself have experienced this firsthand. So card counting in conjunction with hole carding can net anywhere between a 0.5% to 1% player edge. A 2% player edge is a juicy opportunity for any AP. Card counting isn't incredibly difficult. The real skill is in avoiding detection. You see, these AP techniques are not illegal. However, the casino has every right to refuse service and ask you to leave the property. Because of this, being able to maintain an edge whilst not drawing suspicion is the true skill. Some go as far as to alter their appearance each time they arrive on property. A skilled AP at the blackjack table maintains conversation with other players and the dealer, all while maintaining the count. So, what the AP aims to do is increase the bet size once the player has determined he or she is likely to win. To a trained pit boss, this could be fairly obvious. So, a combination of different bet sizes and intentional losses helps to master this. A technique called edge sorting is another way an advantage can be gained, and this involves spotting minuscule details on the backs of each card. An AP will spot tiny imperfections on the backs of each card to better determine their value. However, casinos consider this cheating and not a legitimate means of advantage play. If you're interested, there's a 2014 court ruling on this where a famous professional gambler earned nearly $10 million using this technique in a game called Baccarat. The courts deemed it cheating and he eventually had to pay it all back. I'll post a link in the description. Video poker is not what it sounds like. Although in looks, it's similar to a slot machine. It is akin to a slot machine where the results of the game is generated based off the computer inside, but it's different in the way that it's based off of 5-card draw poker. Essentially, you're dealt 5 cards. Of those 5 cards, you decide which ones you would like to keep. The rest are redrawn. The goal is to make the best 5-card hand. Basic strategy tells you which card or cards you should keep based off the 5 you're given. Unlike live poker, there are no opponents, just you and the machine. The game is simple at its core, and because of this, there are many different variations of this game. Despite the variations and despite it being digital, the results of this game are almost always based off a 52-card deck. How the house gets their edge is the pay table. The pay table tells you how much money you will win based off of how good your hand is. Typically, the house will shortchange the most common winning hands in favor for the more rare ones. Despite this, the house edge on some of these games are razor thin. There are actually resources online that calculate the EV of playing certain video poker machines based off the pay table. APs can use this information in concordance with things like comps in order to gain an advantage. As a general rule, you earn about 30% of your losses in comps, basically free stuff. For example, a player's card is essentially a loyalty card that a player can amass credits based off of how much they play at the same property. These credits can be used to exchange for free play, basically gambling money, and other small things like free rooms and free food. In order to entice players to come back to their property, casinos have promotions that increase the amount of credits a player can earn in a certain period of time. Video poker APs can be so precise with the calculations of the house edge, comps, and certain promotions that they could even conclude how much money they make per hour if they play a certain machine during a certain time. Because of this, the skill of the AP is in the form of research. for scouting opportunities and online casinos and promotions for golden opportunities. Because time is money and these promotions are a limited time, the AP must play as quickly as possible while playing perfect strategy for hours and hours at a time. Sports betting, just like live poker, is a game of skill, where information is king. There are different bets you can make. Anything from a win, loss, or tie, all the way up to how many points you think a team will score. In general, the way sports betting works is that for any game or event, there's a certain period of time you have before the event starts for you to place your bet. Win or lose, moneyline bet, win by how much, spread bet, how many penalties will happen, proposition bet. These are just a few examples of the types of bets that are offered. During this time, the bookmaker, the one in charge of setting the odds, will change the payout of the game based off of any information. Things like match history, home or away, possible injuries, even weather condition can change the odds. Basically, the odds decide how much money is won given the results of the game. When you decide to place your bet, your odds are locked at that rate, so timing is everything. Missing good odds by mere hours can be the difference between hundreds and thousands of dollars. I'll give you an example. AP notices that a certain basketball game has a certain team X favored to win by 9 points, where a certain team Y is the underdog by 9 points. AP happens to know that team X's star player may not play this game, and for whatever reason, the odds do not reflect that. AP bets for team Y, locking in the odds for that bet. Obviously, things are never that cut and dry. It's the bookmaker's job to make money, so as expected, the odds are very competitive. Since it's so competitive, sports betting APs dedicate a lifestyle to knowing everything there is to know about things like football coaches, all the way up to things like horse breeds. It's literally their business to know. As if advantage gambling wasn't niche enough, there are actually more opportunities than AP has to make money, but they make up such a small amount of advantage gambling that I'll set them aside for now. Maybe for another video. Now let's get one thing straight. Being a professional gambler is not easy. Whether it's being on the hunt for opportunities or polishing technique, a prolific AP is always doing research. Scouting opportunities and flying long distances at a moment's notice comes with the job. And when it's a golden opportunity, that means long work hours while maintaining incredible concentration. Finally, a professional gambler isn't trying to make a quick buck or two. A true AP is in it for the long run. And that means being able to survive long losing streaks. An AP's bankroll, basically the amount of money set aside for just gambling, is subject to large ups and downs. And this could be for any number of reasons. Number one, in order for advantage play to be worth their time, an AP must wager at least tens of thousands of dollars per hour. There are resources online to find out how much money you will lose on average per hour. For example, if an AP is playing double-deck blackjack with a 0.5% player edge, betting around 60 hands an hour with an average bet size of $50 for a total wager of $3,000 an hour, the player can expect to earn about $14 an hour. Usually that's not worth their time. If an AP finds a golden opportunity, they put hundreds of thousands of dollars on the line. There are stories of video poker APs spending hours just putting money into a machine. Professional gamblers need to be prepared to survive the volatility of losing many bets in a row, and that means having a huge bankroll. I need to drive this point home. Professional gamblers can have up to hundreds of thousands, up to millions of dollars set aside for just gambling. Number two, just because an AP has an advantage doesn't mean they're going to win. Professional gamblers are looking to maximize their wins and minimize their losses. But at the end of the day, a 1 to 2% player edge doesn't necessarily yield profit right away. Like the law of large numbers states, you need to repeat things over many trials until you realize your expected value. A philosophy adopted by many APs is, if you always play positive EV games, you will have a positive EV life. That is, if you always play with an advantage, then more often than not, you'll come out a winner. Now, this by no means is a comprehensive guide on gambling. Some of the most valuable information is tightly held by networks of APs that, for good reason, are underground. So everything I mentioned here is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more on the subject, but this is all I have time for today. If you're interested in what it's like being a professional gambler, there's this podcast called Gambling with an Edge that I highly recommend. Links below in the description. And if you're interested in some simple tips you can use to get the most out of your next gambling trip, then subscribe and hit that notification bell. I have a video coming out very soon that outlines some practical things you can do to boost your EV, But other than that, my name's TJ Feralis, those were the basics, and I'll see you next time.